Welcome back. Welcome back. Today, I'm going over recent books that I've read that I've rated 4 or 5 star. Let's get it. Okay, so the first book I'm going to go over, I'm going to start with When Crack Was King. The full title is When Crack Was King, A People's History of a Misunderstood Era. And this is by Donovan X. Ramsey. So let me just go over the synopsis before I jump into my review. A kaleidoscopic account of the crack cocaine era and a community's ultimate resilience, told through a cast of characters whose lives illuminate the dramatic rise and fall of the epidemic. The crack epidemic of the 1980s and 1990s is arguably the least examined crisis in American history. Beginning with the myths inspired by Reagan's war on drugs, journalist Donovan X. Ramsey's exacting analysis traces the path from the last triumphs of the civil rights movement to the devastating realities we live in with a racist criminal justice system, continued mass incarceration and gentrification, and increased police brutality. When Crack Was King follows 4 individuals to give us a startling portrait of crack's destruction and devastating Elgin Swift, an archetype of American industry and ambition, and the son of a crack-addicted father who turned their house into a crack house. Lenny Woodley, a former crack addict and sex worker. Kurt Schmoke, the longtime mayor of Baltimore and an early advocate in decriminalization. And Sean McCrae, a community activist, basketball prodigy, and founding member of the Zoo Crew, Newark's most legendary group of drug traffickers. Weaving together riveting research and the voices of survivors, When Crack Was King is a crucial reevaluation of the era and a powerful argument for providing historically violated communities with the resources they deserve. All right, so let's just jump right into it. So this book, it was published in 2023, and it's been on my radar for some time. I'm just getting to it in 2024, the end of 2024 at that. But I'm so glad I did. This book was powerful. I did have a little hesitation starting it because, I don't know, I really didn't want this topic to be mishandled or misrepresented. And Donovan X. Ramsey, he did it justice. So I was actually really glad to see that he actually told the story in a way that I thought was beautiful, but also painful to see how the events of history unfolded. But I am glad that I read it. So this book talks about first and second generation survivors of the crack cocaine epidemic in the 1980s and 1990s. And it covers a lot of myths, like the myths surrounding crack babies and crack addicts, and like looking at the actual users as people as opposed to looking at them as just, scum of the earth or however else they were portrayed at that time. So I did like that it tackled a lot of those myths that I'm sure if this book is on your radar, you've heard a lot of these myths. Maybe you hold true to some of them. I don't know. But I did like how he talked about the crack cocaine era and the myths associated with it. Even like word of mouth, yeah, but even how it's represented in the press, in the news, in political and presidential campaigns. So I appreciated that. One thing that I really did like about this book is how it was organized. Like I said, it's told essentially through the lens of 4 survivors because they all survived in one way or another. And it's the way that it's split up and how the book is organized is really easy to follow and track. I know sometimes with some nonfiction books, it can kind of get lost in the weeds and read more like a reference book as opposed to like a cohesive story, more like a textbook in some cases. So I like how the story was told. I like the fact that it was told through stories as opposed to like reading like a research novel. Donovan X. Ramsey did a really good job at how he actually portrayed these character stories or these people's stories. He gave it a certain validity and authenticity that I feel like I wanted to see in his book, so I appreciated that. and how carefully he handled the story. That was really really nice to see, especially for a heavy topic like this, like the crack cocaine era. Like he did a really good job. And even though the story focused on the survivors, like four survivors of this epidemic, it also went over people that didn't survive. Like they were more so supporting characters in the story, but it made it clear that not everybody who went through that, whether first, second, third hand, actually made it out to be a survivor, made it to the other side. It consumed some people, it consumed families, it made a dent that was generational. And I do like how he acknowledged that. And you can kind of see that portrayed in each character's story, their friends, their family, people they grew up with, people around them. How you can just see this was like an all-consuming fire, and there were people that made it out, and even the people that made it out, they weren't unscathed. So I did like how he made it clear, like it wasn't all peaches and rainbows. Like while we are following these four survivors, it just wasn't that. Like it's not like that was the whole picture. So I appreciated that. It was told well. This book kept my attention. I mean, I really appreciated it. So that's why it's on this list, because I rated that a 5-star book. Next, I'm going to talk about The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. So let me go over the synopsis really quickly. All right. The keeper of stories meets the lost apothecary in this evocative and charming novel full of mystery and secrets. The thing about books, she said, is that they help you to imagine a life bigger and better than you could dream of. On a quiet street in Dublin, a lost bookshop is waiting to be found. For too long, Opaline, Martha, and Henry have been the side characters in their own lives. But when a vanishing bookshop casts its spell, these three unsuspecting strangers will discover that their own stories are every bit as extraordinary as the ones they found in the pages of their beloved books. And by unlocking the secrets of the shelves, they find themselves transported to a world of wonder where nothing is as it seems. Okay, so I rated this book a 4-star. Let me go over why I wouldn't put it as a 5-star in my eyes. It did kind of get into the weeds a little bit. The literary talk was overpowering at times. But other than that, I thought it was well written. It took a little bit to get into. Like the first 30, 40, 50%, I was intrigued enough to keep reading. But there were times where I'm like, okay, it's kind of dragging. Like, let's get on with it. What's going on? But then at that 60% point, it got really good. Kind of start tying up loose ends. A little more mystery popped into it. So it's kind of good. I still rate it a 4-star. I think it was real well written. It's not the kind of book that I would recommend to every single person, though. I mean, I guess I wouldn't recommend any book to every single person, but this is one that you just gotta, like, you gotta see it through. It take a little bit to get there, but when it get there, you'll be glad that you got there. You know what I mean? So it's one that I liked it. I ended up finishing it on a plane. I don't think this is something I would have read 4 or 5 years ago. I feel like at this stage in my life, in my 30s, like, yeah, I read it because I have more patience, and I'm like, I want to find a hidden gem. I want to keep going to see, like, maybe I might be missing something. But it's not something I would have read before. It drug a little, but I still think it was good. I would recommend it to a certain type of reader. If you like that kind of slow build up, there is a little romance in there. There is some romance in there, but it's also some triggering things in there too. So make sure if you look up trigger warnings, check to make sure that some of this stuff is a bit much, but it's good. A little historical fiction, a little mystery, a little romance, a little nice hodgepodge of things if you're into that kind of thing. So check it out if you haven't. Book number 3 that I'm going to talk about is Sugar by Bernice McFadden. Let me give you the synopsis. The novel opens when a young prostitute comes to Bigelow, Arkansas to start over, far from her haunting past. Sugar moves next door to Pearl, who is still grieving for her daughter, who was murdered 15 years before. Over sweet potato pie, an unlikely friendship begins, transforming both women's lives and the life of an entire town. Sugar brings a southern African American town vividly to life with the flowering magnolia trees, lingering scents of jasmine and honeysuckle, and white picket fences that keep strangers out, but ignorance and superstition in. To read this novel is to take a journey through loss and suffering to a place of forgiveness, understanding, and grace. McFadden is the author of the novel Gathering of Waters, Glorious in This Bitter Earth. So this is book number 1 in the Sugar Lacey series. I'm currently reading book number 2, which I'll talk about when I finish. But I would rate this book a 5-star. Bernice McFadden is the author that I'm mad that I'm just now reading her work. Like, I feel like I've been missing out. The way it's written is like a comfort to me. So, like, we all got like comfort movies or comfort shows, comfort foods. This book reads like one of my comfort movies. Like, it reads like something I would go watch that I know I'm gonna like, that makes me feel like home in a certain way. And I'm not from Bigelow, Arkansas in the 1920s and 30s, but it feels like something that I would be drawn to continuously watch if it was a movie. Like, it feels like what I grew up watching. It feels like I'm watching Color Purple. It feels like I'm watching like some other thing. It feels like I'm watching What's Love Got to Do with It. It feels like I'm watching something that makes me feel like, you just feel like me. And I'm mad because I should have been rare and stuff. Bernice McFadden, she did her thing with this. It's beautiful. Like, it's written beautifully. The story is tragic. Let me just say that. Again, check those trigger warnings. But it's written so, like, and I'm sure this style of writing is not for everybody, but it's for me. Because it was written, like, for me. I'm telling you, I'm the target audience of this book. 5 stars all around. I'm the target audience. This book was good. It was so good. And I immediately had to start on This Bitter Earth, which is the second series, the second book in this series, just because it was so good. And I also, not only do I like the way it's written and the storyline, I love books that have, like, unlikely friendships. I just do. I don't know what it is about it. I like it. It's literally like, I love seeing it. I love reading about, like, just not only unlikely friendships, but like true, like you just cut through all of the apprehension, all of the walls and the just everything, and you form a true transforming friendship. I love reading about that. And that's what this is. And that's why this book is a 5-star. It's written beautifully. It made me emotionally connect to it. And I couldn't get Sugar Lacey out of my mind. I had to get the second book. And that's why I started the second book. So this is definitely a 5-star read. Okay, so book number 4 that was a 5-star read for me was Finding Me by Viola Davis. It's her memoir. And I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis. I don't know if y'all want to hear a synopsis for something. I feel like knowing it's her memoir is a synopsis, but I'm going to read it anyway. Here we go. In my book, you will meet a little girl named Viola who ran from her past until she made a life-changing decision to stop running forever. This is my story, from a crumbling apartment in Central Falls, Rhode Island, to the stage in New York City and beyond. This is the path that I took to finding my purpose, but also my voice in a world that didn't always see me. As I wrote Finding Me, my eyes were open to the truth of how our stories are often not given close examination. We are forced to reinvent them to fit into a crazy, competitive, judgmental world. So I wrote this for anyone running through life untethered, desperate and clawing their way through murky memories, trying to get to some form of self-love, For anyone who needs reminding that a life worth living can be born from radical honesty and the courage to shed the sides and be you. Finding Me is a deep reflection, a promise, and a love letter of sorts to self. My hope is that this story will inspire you to light up your own life with creative expression and rediscover who you were before the world put a label on you. Okay, so I read this book a few months back and I never got around to actually making a video. This is definitely a 5-star read for me. I don't know how long you've been watching these videos, but I love a biography. I love a memoir. I love it. I love it. I eat those up. Viola's was powerful. It was relatable because she told it so honestly and from like a very down to earth tone. I really thought she did a good job with this book. It definitely evoked a lot of emotion. You got to see her go from a little girl and all the struggles that came with that, grow and develop into this aspiring actress to then becoming one, becoming a mother, becoming a wife. And it really is a story of like growth and transformation and womanhood and all the pressures that come with that and all of it's a book of reflection, and it's so nice to read something that doesn't always paint people like they're perfect. Now she married, and I can say that she had nothing but perfect, wonderful things to say about her husband and her child. And I understand that, as you should, Viola, as you should. But she really did show just like the duality in people. Her parents, her mama and daddy, her siblings, her neighbors, teachers, things like that. It was a very raw read. And I appreciated that. She left it on the table. She talked through what it was like. Even like she went more into detail about like the showbiz and getting into the industry than I thought she would. But I liked that. I actually appreciated it. She talked about her journey at Juilliard. So it was a really good book. I like Viola Davis. And so maybe I'm biased. I might be. But if you like Viola Davis too, you'll like this book. Definitely check it out. The fifth and final book on this list is 1984 by George Orwell. Let me go ahead and read the synopsis. I'm sure if you're watching this video, I'm sure you know what this book is. You may have been required to read it in school. Maybe not. I wasn't required to read it in school, but I did read it when I was in high school. But I just recently read it again this year as an adult. So let me go ahead and drop the synopsis if you don't know what this is about or you forgot. A masterpiece of rebellion and imprisonment where war is peace, freedom is slavery, and Big Brother is watching. Thought police, Big Brother, these words have entered our vocabulary because of George Orwell's classic dystopian novel, 1984. The story of one man's nightmare odyssey as he pursues a forbidden love affair through a world ruled by warring states and a power structure that controls not only information, but also individual thought and memory. 1984 is a prophetic, haunting tale, more relevant than ever before 1984 exposes the worst crimes imaginable, the destruction of truth, freedom, and individuality. I've heard so many people refer to this book as their favorite book of all time, and I understand why. It's not my favorite book of all time, but I understand why it's other people's favorite book of all time, because it's just that good. It's just that good. I also understand why it's a classic. I also understand why people have this as required reading in high school, college, middle school, wherever they tell you to read it. I also understand why it sold as many copies as it did and why it's revered as like one of the greats. I get it because it's so layered. Again, like I read this when I was in high school and I was just like, okay, it's a book. Everything I read in high school was just like, it's required. Like, I mean, I wasn't required, I don't think, but I was like, I'm gonna read it, whatever. But I was able to appreciate it more this last time that I read it. Also, I rated a 5 star. But I was able to appreciate it more because after I read it, I had so many questions and theories, and I was continuously like playing it back, like, oh, that moment meant this, or did it? Did it mean this? And it's this constant like pattern that I found myself in, rethinking about this part of the book and what that meant. Rethinking about this main character. Did Julia mean that? Did he mean this? Did Martin mean that? Like, oh, big brother, this, like, and I'm like piecing together all of this weeks after I read this book. I'm constantly talking like out to my husband who read it at the same time. Did you think that meant this? Like, did you think that meant that? And it was just good. Like, it's some stuff is just good. I just don't know how else to say it. It stayed on my mind for a while. I actually recently purchased it's called Julia, but it's like the 1984 from Julia's perspective. But anyways, it's so good. I don't know, and it's one of those classics where it reads like a classic. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just if you don't typically like classic novels, you might not like this either. But it really, and I like dystopian style books too, but it really sets this scene, and it's really thought provoking. It's very interesting. You feel like you're taking a side one way or the other. You feel like you're going through this journey. You're in these people's shoes in certain ways, and you're thinking like, this is crazy. Like portions of this I can kind of see have come to pass in some way. Portions of this I can see where people might want XYZ to come to pass. Like I can see like this train of thought or this style of like, I don't know, like restriction or I don't know. It's so good. It's so thought provoking. It's like the perfect book for a book study group. A book club. It's like the perfect book for that because there's so many things that you can discuss. There's so much you can talk about. It's just good. I don't know. But yeah. Those are 5 books that I read this year. One was a 4-star book, now I'm realizing it, which is A Lost Bookshop, and the rest are 5-star reads for me. That I feel like if you're looking for a book to read, you can pick one off this list and give it a try. I thought they were all worth it. I'm glad that I read them all and glad to be sharing them with y'all. All right, so I'm checking out. Let me know if you've read any of these, which I'm assuming most people have probably read 1984. So let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to read one of these and haven't read them, let me know too. All right, see y'all.